Hey, we're live. We're
Hello,
live.
hello.
Jeremy is in Vegas, but have no fear because he found whoever he could find to stick on his channel, give them the keys to the car. So you're in good hands, kind of.
Kind of, a little bit. We'll see how it goes.
No. So you all know Eli. Eli's been on 10K pitches many times. Eli, you want to introduce yourself really quick? Tell people where to find you.
Yeah, howdy, folks. Once upon a time, you found my work at E Pluribus Lunam. No longer a regular contributor there now. Mostly hopping on post Loons every once in a while with Jeremy. A few podcasts here and there. I do a lot of journalism work down here in Missouri. But as far as soccer stuff, that's a lot more sporadic these days. But yeah, I'm just the occasional guest here on the pod.
Well, Eli, as we were just kind of talking about pre-show, this is the first time I've actually met you. I feel like I've known you based on how many times I've listened to your stuff. You've been a fun Twitter follow for me for over a year now, so I highly recommend people look out for you.
And thank you very much. And I'm a fan of the Pod on You Loons cast. I was just catching up on the latest episode today, and I was just saying to Sam before we went live, fantastic discussion of devious licks and the use of sheesh. So for a little Gen Z catch up, it's always good for me to get caught up on what my generation is doing on the interwebs these days.
Yep, yeah. So this is Sam taking over hosting duties from Jeremy for today. It's good to be here. It's an honor to be here, filling some big shoes. Yeah, like I'm just suburban dad, teacher, trying to make sense of the world. So I'm glad that someone finds my navigation through devious licks and new lingo. I'm glad that someone finds that entertaining. Glad that it's not just nerdy and cringy, but
No,
hey.
it's always a good one. Always a good one.
Well, hey, so this is Post Loons, hosted by or sponsored by 9th Street Soccer. I actually believe that the actual term is presented by 9th Street Soccer and Coffee. 9th Street Soccer and Coffee is located in Northeast Minneapolis at 801 South 9th Street with an indoor five-a-side soccer now available. It also has a coffee shop that is opening soon. 9th Street is opening up their new fall and winter pickup times. 9th Street will have pickup 6 days a week, including multiple 2-hour pickup nights. Thursdays will be women's only. Friday is going to be 40 plus. So follow 9th Street on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook with at 9th Street, 9th Street, MPLS to find out how to sign up. You can also learn more at 9thstreetmpls.com. Eli, have you kicked it? No, you're in Missouri.
I'm in Missouri. Yeah, I was back in Minnesota over the weekend, and I was at the Dynamo game. But I've haven't been back to Minnesota for long enough of a period of time to actually make it down to 9th Street and check it out. I hear about it every time I come on the show here and every time I listen. But one of these days I'm going to actually make it there. That's my promise. Maybe that will be my 2022 New Year's resolution, is that I'll actually make it to 9th Street and play soccer there. We'll say that. We'll say that.
There we go. When you do, I hope to be there. We'll battle the pods.
Yes, yes. We'll have a battle of the Post Loons co-hosts. That's what we'll do, and
Yeah.
there'll be one spot on one of the shows that we'll have to have a little kick about to get that spot.
Excellent. Well, hey, man, let's go back and forth with our three things. So you have your three things ready. I have my three things ready. My first thing is going to be Minnesota can beat anyone, quote, when we're healthy. It just seems like we're never actually healthy. We thought we were healthy, or at least we thought we were about as healthy as we could be. Obviously, we knew Hassani Dotson wasn't going to be back yet. We knew Jan Gregish wasn't going to be back yet. But then we hear that Emmanuel Reynoso and Ozzy Alonso don't even make the plane. Hopefully that is just precautionary. Because we have a game coming up this weekend. We have, I think I just wrote this down. In the month of October, there are 7 total games. So there is
Yeah.
a congested schedule coming up. We saw Heath kind of take Emmanuel Reynoso off a little prematurely in the last match. Didn't even bring him to DC today. So hopefully, right? Hopefully it's all about, maybe we lose the battle in order to win the war. But that is my first thing, is Minnesota United can beat anyone when we're healthy.
I think you're absolutely right there, Sam. My first thing here was just that I was wrong about the 3-4-3. I have been advocating for Minnesota United to bring out a 3-4-3 for, over 2 years now. I think I've been on the 3-4-3 bandwagon, and I am embarrassed to say that I started that bandwagon after watching the game tonight. We'll talk about this more during the show, I'm sure, and I'll discount that a little bit, but the 3-4-3 really didn't work in, and it felt sort of like both an adaptation of personnel that if Reynoso's not going to be there, Adrian, he said, well, we're just not going to run at number 10. And he tried that and tried a different approach. And like the commentary crew for at least the DC broadcast, that's what I was watching, was saying early on here, it felt like Minnesota United was playing for a 0-0 draw from the get-go. And that's what this formation seemed conducive to. And instead, playing for a 0-0 draw led to a 3-1 loss. So something didn't go right there. And I was wrong about the 3-4-3.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe they were playing for the draw. I know that they would never admit that, but who
sometimes
knows?
It happens.
On the road, MLS, you don't know. Second thing I'm going to have, so it seems like every time I come on Post Loons, we have a failure to check VAR regarding a conceded penalty by Minnesota United. So last time it was late July. That was the last Post Loons appearance that I made. And it was that late, I'll use it in quotes, penalty by Ethan Finlay while playing Vancouver. And that caused that 2-2 draw at Vancouver that really should have been a 2-1 Minnesota United win. Well, here today, this happens again. Chase Gasper, we'll use it in quotes, conceded a penalty. From my angle, it did not look like a penalty. It looked like Chase had the ball. It looked like the other player did not. Now, we have only the view we see on TV, but the commentators for Minnesota United's broadcast team, DC United's broadcast team, and the Score North radio broadcast all seem to agree that it did not look like a penalty. So yet again, there's a penalty called against Minnesota United, and the official fails to check the VAR replay.
That was an interesting one. I thought for sure he was going to go to the monitor there. It just, especially on that first one, it looked to me like Chase got ball. So I was really shocked with that one. I completely agree with you there. My second thing was simply the lack of meaningful possession that Minnesota United sustained, mostly in the first half. The Loons got more possession in the second half as DC kind of sat back to maintain that win. That's not meaningful possession when you're playing against a bunker. Meaningful possession, there was one stretch it was around the 30-minute mark where for about 10 minutes of the game there, I sat there, and every possession I counted how many passes the Loons strung together, and I never got higher than 6. Do passes score goals? No. But do they kind of lead to better opportunities and better chances? Yes. So I was really, really disappointed with how rarely the Loons were able to just weave through the field with passes. This is normally a team that, they're not one of the best passing teams in MLS, but as far as goals added, as far as the proportion of goals that come from a specific area of the game, passing is very high up for Minnesota United, and that just wasn't occurring tonight. So a lack of meaningful possession, especially in that first half there, I think is really something that kind of doomed the team here and was sort of reflective of how this was going to go, and it was sort of reflective of how that 3-4-3 didn't work as well.
Yeah, and my third thing, I thought Audi Field would be a little rowdier, right? I get that it's a weekday. I get that the COVID pandemic is still a thing. But Washington, D.C. is a, quote, big market team, and Minnesota is not. They have a brand new stadium. They have a good team. They have one of the original teams in the MLS. They have some history. I'm just like, why can't they fill their stadium? I even checked out on SeatGate. What were tickets going for? It was like $11. $11 would have gotten you into Audi Field tonight.
Apparently they don't want to come see Minnesota. We're just we're not that kind of market when we're an away team. But yeah, or maybe everyone's at the congressional baseball game. I don't know if that's happening in DC, but I hear that's happening tonight. Who knows? Who knows?
It just that is why Allianz needs to be a fortress. Is we have something that a lot of teams don't have.
No, absolutely. The consistent sellouts are a huge advantage. Look at Portland as an example. Providence Park is a fortress. That's what Allianz can be. My third thing was on rotation tonight, because we saw two types of rotation in this game. We saw squad rotation in terms of players like Reynoso and Ozzy not even making the trip and going to the bench early and often for Adrian Heath. But we also needed to see a lot of defensive rotation for a back three or back five, however you want to classify it, to work. And I think the Loons went 1 for 2 on successful rotation tonight. I think the successful rotation was player rotation, that they got a lot of guys in the lineup, got a lot of guys minutes, and got guys like Fragapane some well-deserved and much-needed rest there. The rotation defensively was not there, so that's a 50% rotation rate for Minnesota United. I don't know what a good stat for rotation rate is. I'm going to say 50% is not it. I'll leave it at that.
Well, all right. Well, once again, Post Loons is presented by 9th Street Soccer and Coffee, located in Northeast Minneapolis at 801 South 9th Street, with an indoor 5-a-side soccer field. So 5-a-side soccer available now, and a coffee shop opening soon. 9th Street is opening up their new fall and winter pickup times. They're going to have pickup 6 days a week, including multiple 2-hour pickup nights. Thursdays will be women's only. Friday, they have a 40-plus time. I'm guessing that meant Thursday there is a women's only spot, and Friday they have a 40-plus spot. Follow 9th Street on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook with @9th Street MPLS to find out how to sign up. You can also learn more at 9th Street MPLS.com. Eli, I should have practiced the MPLS part before doing this.
It's the letters are hard. Just this morning for one of my journalism classes down here, I was having to record the TV station name at the end of doing your stand up, and that was the only part of my script that I kept messing up. Saying letters in order is hard. It's a lot harder than it should be. Yeah.
I won't get sidetracked. This isn't Pot on You Loons. If it was Pot on You Loons, I would get sidetracked all over the place. But do you do stand up?
Oh no, and that's not stand-up comedy. Sorry, stand-up in a journalistic sense for a TV shot. Yes, yeah. Just me standing in front of a camera, in front of a new subdivision and talking. But yeah,
gotcha. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, I know that this is going off script a little bit, but we do have a couple of comments that are coming in on YouTube, and I just want to shout out to everyone. Make your comments on YouTube. We can read them on air. So first comment comes in from Dave Valensky. No Reynoso, and we still play the false 9. I'm sorry, but Hunu has to start if we're doing this formation. Why the heck do we sub out all our scoring players? You're down and gold. You're not tied. I'm guessing that last part was a typo. You're down. I'm guessing down a goal and not tied. So thank you, Dave, for writing that one in. Now, Eli, do you have any thoughts on that? I have just a couple.
Yeah, actually, I think with Reynoso's absence, I might be even more fine with the false 9 than I normally would be, just because there's a massive pocket of space in the middle of the field there, and that needs to be occupied however this team can best occupy it, and that genuinely might be Robin Lod sitting back a little bit and kind of going super fluid in that attack. I also think the false 9 doesn't matter a ton, because the game plan here with this back 3, back 5 was just to absorb DC United as much as possible and then hit them on the counter. And I've said this before, when you're countering, positions don't really matter. It's just, here's this guy who's 20 yards ahead of me running down the middle of the field, and there's a guy who's 10 yards behind him running on the other side of the field. It doesn't matter who's a striker, a winger, a midfielder, a fullback. That really doesn't matter. So I think Lod was fine there, and kind of his fluidity and ability to play a lot of spots in attack there and kind of fill a lot of those gaps was fine. Again, the whole system really didn't work, but I think in theory that's fine, especially since Adrian Unu hasn't really been convincing as a striker as far as positioning or the actual scoring of goals goes. So I think I'm fine with sticking with the hot hand of Robin Lod there, unless you're going to go with something different from squad rotation. So I think I'm fine with the false nine since there's a lot of space there. But I certainly see the argument for starting a traditional striker up there too, just to kind of keep that back line pinned up there. I think it can go either way.
So my mind was, and I guess I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but I think that this, right, I always like to kind of have the conversations come up organically. Now, so Dave talks about why do we sub out all of our scoring players at once? And I was trying to figure this out too, because in the past, when Adrian Heath makes mass substitutions, he's usually upset. And I'm guessing he probably wasn't in the best mood, but I don't think he was necessarily mad at his players. He was probably frustrated with the way the game was going. He was probably frustrated with the penalty. It didn't really seem like he was just classic Adrian Heath is upset and subs out a bunch of guys. It to me, the way I read it, and I could be completely wrong, and just full disclosure, because we hopped on this right afterwards, I didn't get to check the post-game interview like I normally would, but I'm almost wondering if he just gave up on the night and said he wanted to shift his focus to Dallas. Get those guys that already have quite a bit of miles on their legs, get those guys that have already missed some time this season, get those guys off the field and shift towards Dallas. I don't know. Do you think that there could be any truth to that, or am I just letting my mind wander?
No, I think there could be. I don't think you'll hear Adrian Heath come out and say that because coaches don't do that. But It certainly makes sense that you're down in a game 2-1, and it's not been a particularly competitive 2-1. Frankly, the Loons were kind of lucky to get that one. Dabasi was completely unmarked on that set piece, and so it's kind of a situation where if you're a coach, you're not super happy with your attack. You'd rather maybe save those guys, especially Fragapani and Lud and Ethan Finley too. I guess just all three of them. You'd rather save them for a game when you could really use them. So it's right at the 60th minute, which whenever a sub happens kind of right at one of those sort of arbitrary marks, like 60th minute, 75th minute, those sort of feel kind of scripted to you, especially the 60th minute one. So maybe it was kind of a spot where we're going in, the game plan was we get to the 60th minute. If the attack doesn't feel like it's jiving, if it doesn't feel like there's a great shot to go out and get points here, just pull them out, let some other guys run on. 30 minutes is a significant amount of time for a lot of those guys like Rosales and Nico Hansen. So you go on, you give them 30 minutes in a situation where there's not a whole lot to lose because you're already trailing. Best case, you grab a goal and maybe get a point out of it. Worst case, you concede another goal. It's a Wednesday night in DC. Who really cares in the long run? I think is kind of the thinking there. So it could be a little bit of giving those guys a break, a little bit of the attack isn't working, we're going to pull them out of there. But I think mostly it's probably no sense in running these guys for 30 more minutes than we have to.
Yeah. We'll do one more comment and then we'll get to our game notes. So Chris saying, "Oh my, seeing Sam's face is something I didn't expect. LOL." Yeah. Yeah. No, I guess I don't know what to say. Good to surprise. Yeah. Chris then adds, "Eli, I think the 3-4-3 has potential, but Heath seemingly doesn't practice anything other than a 4-2-3-1, and we look unprepared."
Yeah. Sam, I have a 3-4-3 tangent that I can go down. I think I'll go down it here. It's not too off topic. Yeah. So I think when you're adjusting from a 4-2-3-1 to a 3-4-3, there are going to be a few stress points in your system that are significantly different from what you play in a 4-2-3-1 because they're very different formations, right? One is going to be your wingbacks, that you're going to need them to get significantly higher up the field because they have to contribute more to the attack. And that's the benefit of the 3-4-3, that they can do that. That works and doesn't work with Minnesota United. With a guy like Roman Metner, who contributes to the attack pretty regularly anyway, that's kind of natural because he has that ability to get back, and he did that all night. He did fantastic on the kind of individual rotations and recovering from some of those positions. A guy like Chase Gasper, he when he lacks that speed to get up there. If I was playing a 3-4-3, I would actually play Chase as a center back and wouldn't put him on the wing. He was getting really far up the field and getting pinned up there consistently, which meant Bake Dabase had to come over to the left flank and defend a lot out wide. That's fine sometimes. That's why you have an extra center back in there so that somebody can split out wide. But for example, in that second goal, what happens? Chase Gasper gets caught too far up. That's fine. Dabase comes out. Again, that's fine. Chase Gasper comes back down to double. That's fantastic. But then Bake Dabase loses his footing and gets torched And then all of a sudden, there's a huge man advantage in the box for DC United, and they have a guy running at goal with the ball and nobody in front of him. So there's a pressure point in the system there that kind of falls apart. The midfield's another big one, especially with Reynoso gone at the number 10 spot. Somebody needs to occupy that space. A little bit of his Robin Lod coming back as a false 9, but again, he's playing striker, so that doesn't work out perfectly. You have Will Trapp, who's a 6, and all of a sudden that's really defensive because you've almost got 6 defensive-focused people there. Because the benefit of a 6 is that they can kind of operate like that middle center back and drop in between the center backs and carry the ball more. That's kind of a redundancy. And so we saw tonight Will Trapp having to attack more and be more of a creative attacking player, which he can do, but that's not his specialty. That's not why you signed Will Trapp or put him out in the team. And Ja'Cory Hayes is a good player who brings on a good element as a sub, but as a starter, as the number 8, he's not going to bring that a whole lot. And then both midfielders getting yellows in the first half put some defensive stress on them as well. So there was kind of a lot happening in the defensive middle of the pitch and very little happening in the attacking center of the pitch. That's just a disconnect that isn't really what you want out of a system, because you're forcing your midfielders who aren't really creative midfielders to be a lot more creative. So those are kind of the stress points, and I feel like that was sort of the weak spots we saw. There was also some problems with defensive rotations, that when you're running 3 center backs in there, you either are going to have to really man mark and stick to them, or run a really strict zone and pass guys off between them. And that requires a lot of communication. That communication at times was there. There was a lot of horizontal movement from DC, because that's how you beat 3 center backs. You get them to be pulled out of position, or you get them to not switch off on you. They did fine with that, but there was also a lot of times where DC was playing long balls or long diagonals in and was finding gaps in the channels, which means one of the center backs didn't quite switch off with the other one, so that guys were being left unmarked in there. So those rotations weren't really happening in there either, especially in the situations where one center back goes out wide, the other 2 weren't really compensating. So that's a long-winded way of saying the 3-4-3 wasn't executed super well. I still think it can work, especially if you had Fragapane and Reynoso as your 2 attacking midfielders. That's fantastic because they're such a good duo. But with this group of personnel in this situation, it really felt like the 3-4-3 was kind of a way to just maybe get a 0-0 draw, because you pack enough defenders in there to keep them from scoring and possess the ball mediocrely enough in attack to keep them from holding it for 90 minutes. That felt like it was the game plan, and that just didn't quite work. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
That was a TED Talk, man.
Yes.
That was an answer. So before we hit start broadcast or go live or whatever that button was, before that, I said, Eli, one of us here is just screwing around, and another one of us here is actually going to make a career out of this someday. That's going to go on your video resume. That right there, that TED Talk. Excellent job, Eli.
We'll see. Thank you.
We got to send Jeremy to Vegas more often.
Yeah, apparently. Good things happen when Jeremy's in Vegas. Not for him and winning money, but for us, sure.
Oh, have you heard? Has he been losing?
Well, he tweeted when he announced that we were on the show. He tweeted that he had some money riding on the game tonight and had already lost some on Champions League earlier in the day. So,
okay.
Yeah, friends of Jeremy, send your condolences. It sounds like he is perhaps expectedly not making bank in Vegas. He won't be coming back a richer man.
That's why I'm glad I'm not a betting guy, because anytime I do go to Vegas, which has only been twice, but I just bet on the teams that I want to win. I don't bet on, I don't use my mind. I only use my heart. So anytime I go to Vegas, I'd be putting in a ticket saying the Loons are going to win the MLS Cup. And it's probably good that I don't do that.
Yeah. Well, and Sam, I'm 20 years old. The only time I went to Vegas was in the spring, and I stopped for lunch there. So I can't even really blow money recklessly in Vegas. And I think that's a good thing as well.
You're 20 years old?
I am 20 years old, yes.
Man. Okay. To be young.
Oh,
well,
yes.
Hey,
oh, yes.
Let's get to the game notes. It is first half. So things, right. The game started going the way it was in the 21st minute. It was Andy Najjar draws a penalty called on Chase Gasper. We already kind of spoke on this. From the broadcast, it looked like Chase Gasper got the ball.
Yes.
It looked like not a penalty from the angle that we saw in the broadcast. I do know, based on people I was talking to, that Kendra and the Minnesota United broadcast team did not think it was a penalty. I have heard that the DC United broadcast team did not think it was a penalty. And I was actually listening while watching. I was listening to the Score North broadcast, and they did not think it was penalty. So yeah, I get we're doing this for fun, right? We're doing this for fun as a hobby, and it did not look like a penalty to us. But for the professionals that actually make a living off of analyzing soccer, didn't look like a penalty for them either. So my question is if it was a penalty, explain it to us, MLS. Explain it to us, because we're not seeing it. And now twice in one season, like, you want us fans to care about this game. You want us to be invested in it. But then when something like this happens, it's almost as if it didn't matter. When you don't address it, it's almost as if it didn't matter. So why was it a penalty, MLS, is what I'm asking.
I think as well, I'd love to go back. I'm pretty sure during the MLS is Back tournament, we got to hear the audio between the ref on the field and the VAR. I'm pretty sure. And I'd love to go back to that, because that kind of transparency is so valuable. Because the thing that I'm just wondering here is why the referee didn't go to the monitor to look at this, because on the broadcast, it looked pretty clearly like Chase Gasper got the ball here. I think maybe the penalty was on something he did with his arms and a push. It was also just a heck of a dive from Nahar. But I want to know why the ref didn't go to the monitor to look at this and to see it for himself. You know, what did the VAR say that was convincing enough that the ref was like, nope, yep, we're going to listen to the man in my earpiece or woman in my earpiece, and we're going to go with this. I would just love to be hearing that audio on every single exchange, partly because it's just fascinating to know what the referees are saying to each other on the field. I think that's a step that MLS could take to enhance the broadcast, because I don't know of any other global league that's doing that. That level of transparency could be kind of new ground to break in soccer, and I think would be a huge asset to MLS.
Yeah, and it's like, I get it, right? Like, those of you that listen to Pod on You Loons, I'm a teacher. I'm in education. I make decisions that piss people off all the time. Okay. I get that being a ref is a sucky job sometimes, where you make decisions that aren't going to make people happy. But you have to make the right decision according to the book. I get that, but be able to explain it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like your idea. I had forgotten about the MLS is back, where they were kind of explaining the VAR reviews in a little bit more depth.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I'm a journalism guy, so I love transparency. But I just those exchanges, it's not like it's super candid conversation happening. It's very professional communication and using terms that really only referees throw about, like a kick from the mark being a penalty. That's something that really only referees going to say. So yeah, I think there's really no reason why those exchanges couldn't be aired, or even aired and tape delayed, so that, you know, a producer or somebody has the big red button to say, oh no, we don't want this exchange played.
Yeah.
But I think that would be valuable, and maybe PRO will make a statement about it. They tend to kind of do that with some of these calls, so we'll see.
They didn't on the Vancouver one.
Okay.
At the end of July, they did not.
I think it might sort of depend on outrage, and also with the reporters, there's always a designated pool reporter who can ask questions of a referee. I don't know who that is in DC, because I'm not connected to the MLS media groups anymore, but maybe that person will ask as well. We shall see.
Yeah, and yeah, you reminded me, with the MLS is back, they were trying out some new stuff, if I remember. They were basically piloting some possibly innovative ideas for broadcasting, and I forget what the legacy of that has been, if some of those things have caught on, or if some of those things are just being shelved for now, or if they didn't like certain things. I'm actually forgetting about that, but now that you bring that up, I think I'm going to look into that.
I think I feel like there have been more in-game sideline interviews with coaches that I don't remember those happening before MLS is back, and I don't think they're particularly valuable, because one, coaches just don't give great insight on sideline interviews anyway. You're also asking them to talk while they're standing there watching the game. You know, I think the best case scenario there is that something funny happens and you get a funny reaction out of the coach, and that probably wouldn't even be appropriate for TV. If it happened, then it's good. So yeah, I think that's maybe one of the less productive things to come out of the tournament. Also, I would love to see the spider cam or the tactical cam for every single MLS broadcast. I know that's more stadium dependent, but that was fun back in the MLS is back days as well.
For sure. So yeah, minute or two later, Ole Kamara converts. the penalty for his 17th goal of the season.
Man, that's a lot of goals.
Can you imagine a Loon scoring 17 goals at this stage in the season? Just in the season would be great, right?
Yeah. Now, we'll start there.
8 of the goals from penalties. Okay, so this obviously was a penalty, so this was his 8th goal from a penalty. Wow. Now, we were all, right? We've been down this road before. We were all wondering, would Minnesota answer? We've been there for games where Minnesota answers. We've been there for games where Minnesota does not. And I think with the absence of Reynoso, we were wondering if this would just be one of those games where Minnesota never recovers from this. But in the 40th minute, right? So we talk about Kamara and all of the goals he's racking up. Franco Fragapane racking up the assists. It was his 7th assist. It was off of a free kick. Baki Dabasi gets the header, gets that goal in the 40th minute, makes the game 1-1.
Yeah, and that set piece was just clinical. And that's what, as a road team in any league, set pieces are an easy way to get back in the game, because you could have 1% possession of the ball in a game, win one set piece, and it's a free ball into the box. So they're so valuable when you can get them on the road, especially. And it was a great service by Fragapane. Dabasi, I think it was Donovan Pines who was supposed to be marking him on the set piece. Pines kind of sat off him a little bit. Dabasi had nobody right on his back, so he had an uncontested header, went up for it, clean header in the goal. It's as if it was just Fragapane and Dabasi playing a little 2-person drill here on the training ground. Just very, very easy, and that's what you need to do if you're Minnesota United. And it's a team that last year was so good on set pieces. I feel like that hasn't translated as much this year, but set piece is a fantastic way to get back in the game. Probably one of the easiest. So it was good to see this team get that opportunity and execute, and then be threatening on other set pieces throughout the game as well.
Yeah, so it looked like going into the half 1-1, regrouping with the draw, or not quite with the draw, but with the equalizer. Looked like we'd get a chance to regroup, but just 5 minutes. So Dabasi just scored the goal, had a weird fall. It was a non-contact fall. We all worried it was a non-contact injury. We're all thinking ACL.
Yeah.
And that allowed Ole Kamara it allowed him free to cross the ball in. Julian Gressel scores a goal, makes it 2-1 in the 45th minute.
I think with some of these goals, what really surprised me was how often DC United was creating numerical advantages around the box, considering Minnesota United was playing with functionally 5 defenders and a defensive midfielder. When you're doing that, the goal is kind of to pack the box, right? Like we said, to play for the 0-0 draw. So it was really interesting to me that there were so many times where DC was having man advantages. I think on this goal, it was 5 DC United players on 2.5 Minnesota United attackers, we'll say, once he got it through there. So it wasn't happening the way I thought it would. And part of that's rotations in the defensive scheme. Part of that's players getting caught out of position. But yeah, just giving away too many numerical advantages, and those are all too easy to convert into goals, because it's a situation of just find the open man, and that guy's going to get an open shot on goal. And open shots tend to lead to goals at a pretty significant rate. They're kind of the most valuable attacking opportunity you can get. So keeping those to a minimum is always a good defensive tactic.
So going to the half 2-1, we're down, and we come out of the half, and it could have gotten worse right away. So it's the 51st minute. Russell Canoes draws a penalty against Baki Dabasi. Now, I've heard this penalty called soft. When you do look at the video, right, it was very clear that Dabasi did not get the ball. Dabasi did get Canoes, whether it was unfortunate or not. It did happen. So I don't know. As Kamara was lining up to try to make his 9th converted penalty kick, I personally wasn't feeling too cheated. I was feeling frustrated, right? It happened, right? Nothing you can do about it. But that penalty denied by Tyler Miller. So Kamara does not get his 17th goal. He does not get his 9th PK. That one denied by Tyler Miller. What are your thoughts on both the penalty as well as the save by Tyler Miller?
Yeah, well, I think first, this is actually, I was talking about that 5-on-2.5 situation. That was actually on this penalty. I was mixing up my dangerous opportunities conceded by the Minnesota defense. But still, it was not a good situation for DeBasi. The guys who were back in this situation, the defenders, actually handled it well, and it kind of calmed down, and then DeBasi stepped up and made this challenge that, it is a soft penalty, but I think it's a penalty, and especially when you compare it to the standard of penalties set earlier in the game. By precedent, this is very obviously a penalty, if we're going by the what happened to Chase Gasper call earlier. So definitely a penalty. Kamara steps up, and he always does the kind of stutter step in the penalty routine, and with that, you can't get too fancy with it with penalties. Sometimes, the best route is just to smack it with some power in the corner. Kamara didn't do that. He hit it kind of weakly, right in Miller's range. It was an easy save. I'm not even sure Miller really had to guess. He might have been able to kind of read that shot and still get to it because there just wasn't a lot of power there. So for a guy who scored 8 penalties before it, this is not a very good penalty from Kamara, but that felt like a lucky break for the Loons. It really should have been, because you don't expect Kamara to whiff on a penalty quite like that, especially when it's the second penalty you've given up in a game. The momentum could have swung there, but didn't as much as I think it should have or could have.
Yeah, penalty saves can be they can get you as psyched as a goal can.
Oh, absolutely. It's functionally a goal in your favor, because -1 for the other team is just as good as +1 for you. So
yeah. Now the substitutions start coming relatively early, and we talked about this a little bit, but you take off our front four. You put in Hanu for Fragapane, Adi for Lud, Rosales for Hayes, and Hansen for Finlay. So you take off our front four. You take off 3 of the guys that have been, 3 of the guys who outside of Reynoso have been our most dangerous offensive weapons all season long. And they're just done for the night. You take them off all at once. Now, we already kind of talked about that, about how perhaps Heath was just starting to look ahead at Dallas. Perhaps Heath kind of gave up on DC United, wanted to make sure his guys were fresh for Dallas, right? They've had some injuries of their own. He's worried about the miles that they're putting on their legs. Now, if you don't have anything else to add about that, Eli, I kind of want to pick your brain about something we talked about on Pod on You Loons. How do you feel about Hanu? We're giving him playing time, but we're not necessarily giving him playing time with the guys that we want him to develop a connection with.
Yeah, I think that's a really good distinction to make with his playing time. And it's definitely interesting as we evaluate him. Because one, he's coming into late game situations where he's facing tired legs and an established game flow and things like that. But at the same time, he's not really a striker who seems to rely on his pace. So I don't think that's as much of a factor. But I think part of where Hunu's game is supposedly supposed to be good as a striker is his ability to do the hold-up play, to do the build-up play, and involve himself with other guys. So like you said, when suddenly you're having him play with an assorted group of substitutes, that's not great. That said, it's also hard to look at what Hunu has done and say, oh, well, he deserves to play with the starters or play with that, first unit or whatever you want to call it. So it's a difficult situation. I think maybe part of it too is just getting him minutes in general with any group of guys is valuable, builds chemistry, gets him used to the MLS style of play and things like that. And just gets him minutes to maybe, score a few more goals and build more confidence, things like that. But I do think in the long run, if Adrian Hunu is going to be the solution at striker, those minutes with the starting unit have to come. But it's kind of a chicken in the egg situation. Which comes first? Does he earn those starting minutes, or do you give them to him so he scores more goals? I don't know which has to come first. It seems like for Adrian Heath, he's kind of going with the Hunu has to score some goals to earn his way back in there. And it's hard to argue with that because I don't know if there's a right answer to that question.
Yeah. Chicken and the egg. I think that's a great way to put it, because right, you want him to have that experience with those guys, but at the same time, Lod is outperforming him at his own position, and we want to win some games. We want to climb in the standings, so hopefully we can get that 4th spot and host a playoff match at the fortress that is Allianz Field.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, there was an 81st minute substitution. Agudelo comes on for Coleman. Obviously, a little bit more of an offensive shift, maybe a little bit too little, too late. Though I don't know what more. I don't know what more inspiring substitution we could have done. Worth talking about.
Well, I think
this was kind of at the point where I honestly, Eli, this was kind of at the point where I was gathering my stuff to head downstairs.
Yeah, no, I was as well. I was getting my lighting situation set up here, getting my mic hooked up, so I was just paying attention peripherally. But these subs just, on paper don't make a ton of tactical sense to me, especially the quadruple sub. Rosales in for Hayes, that makes sense. That's kind of a like for like switch. I think I haven't seen enough of Rosales to really know, but based on what I'm hearing, I think that's a like for like. But then bringing on Adi and Unu, those guys are going to be pretty straightforward strikers. Then you bring on Nico Hansen, who's a winger, and suddenly you're running a 3-4-3 with the front 3 being 2 strikers and a winger. That's kind of awkward, especially because Unu and Adi are not the most agile guys to really be doing a whole lot on the wing. So you bring in Agudelo, and he can play wing a little bit more. So that kind of balances out into a 4-2-4. But at this point, after we hit the 60th minute, it felt like the Loons were kind of just breaking into, here's our defenders, here's our attackers. One group stops the ball and boots it to the other and hopes something happened. And when games disintegrate into that, that's very rarely a good sign for producing goals or doing anything that attractive to watch as far as soccer goes.
There was another goal, so it was a 3-1 loss. I don't know, honestly. I don't know if it feels like a 3-1 loss. It wasn't good. It wasn't something I was super excited about as a Minnesota United fan. I don't think it's something that I've seen worse games. Let's put it that way. I've seen worse games than this one. Comment on the YouTube stream. So this one comes from Aaron. Played like they didn't care. I know this game doesn't mean as much as a division game, but that was a bad-looking team with an even worse game plan. Also, why can we not pass the ball?
I'll touch on that last part there, actually, for passing the ball, because this was interesting, and like I talked about, it was my second thing, that there was no continuous possession. There was not a lot of off-ball movement, but that's kind of fine. One of the issues is that one of the keys to Minnesota United's system is guys who can dribble with the ball, mostly Reynoso and Fragapane. They dribble and great opportunities for guys to then move off the ball into the space that they occupied. And with just Fragapane, doesn't happen as much. It's just like Molino and Fragapane are fairly interchangeable from last year. The system worked last year as well. Then when Kevin Molino left earlier this year, it didn't look as good because it was just Reynoso doing this. So having 2 dribblers is really important to that. But it was players like Ramon Metner just not even be able to connect and play that first ball out of the defense that so often, they'd play not a clearance, but a pass out of the back line, and it would go right back to DC. So getting those initial passes is important. And that's where Ozzy comes in. This was still in the MLS's back tournament last year, I think, that I logged all the possessions from a half in just about a very significant amount of the time. I don't remember the number. The first pass played was to Ozzy Alonso from the defense. And then he would then turn and move up the field and distribute it from there. You take him out of there in this game, and that personnel really, really changes the way this team operates in possession. So without Reynoso, without Alonso, that's significant as far as passing goes, and that's going to lead to kind of a lack of connection there, which means a lack of possession and kind of just how bad it looked. And I think on the Aaron's point that it looked like the Loons didn't really care down the stretch, I think that's valid. The work rate wasn't there. Again, it was splitting into offense and defense because it didn't look like a lot of people were wanting to run box to box. And that third goal that DC scored was just Minnesota players being caught up and nobody getting back. I don't put too much weight in it. To me, this game felt a little bit like a 1-0 loss, that there was one legitimate goal that DC scored. They got lucky off a penalty. Loons got lucky off a couple plays in the goal they scored. But it felt like there was really only one super legitimate chance earned tonight, and that was DC getting that second goal. And then Minnesota had a nice goal off the set piece. But, as far as I'd be curious what the XG numbers for this game are. I haven't looked at them yet, but it certainly didn't feel like a 3-1. And I don't think it's time to burn down the barn for Minnesota United. There's still hope, especially because, like you said, when they're healthy, they're good. But still not a fun way to spend a Wednesday night watching that.
This is such a team of the highs and the lows.
Absolutely.
We were so excited the past couple of weeks that big win against the LA Galaxy. We got excited about the big win against Houston too, even though it was Houston. But we were feeling pretty high on that. And as a podcaster, right, as a Minnesota United podcaster, I can tell everyone out there was feeling excited too, because when Minnesota United is doing well, our plays and our downloads go way up. When they're losing, they go way down. So I can tell that people were pretty excited, and it's always when we get a little excited that the buzzkill follows, unfortunately. But I don't know. Do you think that that's just an MLS thing with just the parity of the league compared to a lot of leagues in the world that people may follow, that MLS fans may follow?
I think so, and I think this is a pretty unique game that, well, one, MLS has conferences, which is different. It's an interconference game on a Wednesday night when weirdly every MLS team is in action tonight, which that's kind of cool. But it's a random Wednesday night in September too. People have school. I'm putting off doing homework by doing this. It's not a super attractive night to watch soccer, and so it's kind of a game that doesn't really matter. I don't think when people are typing up their season reviews here, maybe I'll be wrong here, but I don't think when people are talking about this season in the whole, they're going to look back and say, oh man, that loss to DC on Wednesday, September 29th is that's where the season fell apart. It could be, but it doesn't feel like this game will matter a whole lot. And that sort of seemed to show itself on the field, at least from Minnesota United's mentality and the way Adrian Heath set this team up and the way the players kind of carried themselves towards the end there. I do think it's a little bit unique to MLS because the Premier League doesn't have games like that where it's, I guess outside of around the holidays, but where it's, a Wednesday night halfway across a country that's, I don't know how much bigger the US is than England, but significantly bigger. It's a long trip, different time zones against teams that play each other once, maybe twice a year, but I think now just once with how big MLS has gotten. It's that kind of game, I think.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. So on tap, we have FC Dallas, October 2nd. That is the first of 7 games we have in October. So October will be a busy month.
Very busy.
Jeremy's going to have his hands full with all these post-Loons episodes.
No more vacations for him.
Yeah.
It's getting real now.
He better get back.
Yeah.
He better get back. Eli, any last things you want to touch on before you go and do some homework and I go and do some grading?
Yes. Opposite ends there.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that will be interesting to watch during October is how squad rotation plays out, because not every player can play 7 games in 31 days. That's a game every 4.5-ish days, I think, if my quick math serves me right. That's going to lead to tired legs, and you got to consider the playoffs on the horizon here. So it'll be interesting to see what systems look like, especially as guys like Reynoso and Fragapane aren't able to play together match in, match out, and you have to rest those guys, especially if some of them are kind of nursing some knocks and injuries that just come with the wear and tear of a season. So it's rather unique that you've got the season coming to a sort of a close, to a close. You're not even sort of, and it's ramping up like this with a lot of matches. There's an international break in there, isn't there? So potentially,
yeah, I know there's international games. I don't know if there's much of a break.
Yeah, I think no break for MLS teams, I suppose. Another fun part of MLS. But if potentially, I haven't seen if any Loons players are going to have to miss time because of that. But, that's more guys missing out on games who you're not able to rotate. So October will be a very real test for how deep this team is. And I'm not sure we've had a great look at how well the depth can stack up. But there reaches a point where there can't be more games like this one that are sort of throwaway games where you hope for a 0-0 draw. It gets very real very quickly here. and it'll be a good test for the Loons one way or another.
All right. Well, hey, so check out the sponsor, 9th Street MPLS. Keep following Jeremy Rushing in his 10K empire. I'm a fan of all of it. I'm a fan of Post Loons. I'm a fan of the flagship 10K pitches. I'm a fan of Talk and Flock. Check out all those. Eli, you're a good Twitter follow. If anyone out there doesn't follow Eli yet, give him a follow. Even the stuff he talks about with Missouri, I've barely even been to Missouri, but even that I find interesting. You're great at what you do. You want to throw that Twitter handle out one more time?
Yeah, the Twitter handle is @by Eli Hoff. It's an eclectic mix of random soccer things, some bad food takes, some things on agriculture, since that's what I write about now, some things about what it's like at life here at the University of Missouri. I brand myself as eclectic now. I promise nothing other than you will get a little bit of everything. So that's the Twitter brand these days.
Yeah, and I'll vouch for it. It's entertaining. And hey, check out my stuff. Pod on You Loons. We're at Pod Loons. We're just some guys that like the Loons that are going to hang out and talk about the Loons. So come join us.
It's an entertaining product. I will vouch for that.
Oh,
again,
appreciate
you can learn about devious licks.
If for no
other reason. And the episode's called Sheesh too. You should really take up some Gen Z branding there too. I think that could be the niche.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe you'll have to come on, Eli. You can come on. You can be the Gen Z rep.
There we go. I'm honored to carry our flag, even though I don't know much about what's happening with our generation either, to be honest. But I'll carry the flag anyway.
There you go. All right. Well, Jeremy, if you're listening, thank you for the opportunity to fill your shoes. Big shoes to fill for sure. I hope you're enjoying Vegas, buddy. Everyone else, have a good night.
See y'all.